I would imagine like, yeah, I can see a question and algebra and I can solve it very quickly. But while actually solving in the practice quizzes, it wasn't as easy. Then there were quick tips in your structure, right? In your modules also, which I actually paid attention to improve my efficiency. Because if I would do it in a normal way, it would take time. Thanks to you and the eGMAT faculty, honestly. I mean, each one of the person who is giving those video lectures, everyone is putting in their 100% to make the students understand the concept, and everything matters at the end of the day. So each effort counts. So for me, even everything counts. The online lectures, the recorded ones, everything mattered at the end of the day. I also attended some of the seminars or the workshops on Saturdays and Sundays, right?
Yeah.
So there's a better understanding, like because they are doing it together, and everyone, like the 30 to 40 people who have joined the seminar, doing it together, and you understand कि हाँ 98% लोग मेरे वाला कर रहे हैं. So that question, like that thing comes together.
Hello, everyone. A very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to another debrief session with eGMAT. Today, we have with us Diya, who's scored a 695. So welcome, Diya, and thank you for joining in.
Thank you so much, Ava. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share my story. Yeah, good evening, everyone. I'm happy to share my journey with you all.
Yes, and I'm sure that your story is going to be an incredible inspiration as we deep dive into it, because you started off with a 495. At this point, we're talking about a massive 200 points improvement across the sections. So we will definitely short deep dive into each of those. So when you took your first mock, Diya, what was the feeling, and why don't you take it forward from there?
Yeah, so obviously during Feb I took my first mock, and it was just like I wasn't sure if I wanted to do MBA or if I wanted to pursue GMAT, but I took that free mock and I was like, "Okay, let's see how I perform, or am I even capable of doing it, right?" Like, so that question was there, but I had that sense of confidence that I will score good only in one time only because I have an engineering background, I've done JEE main, so like this is easy only, I thought. But then I gave my mock and it was a 495 and I was like truly disappointed in myself. But yeah, so that was the thing. And then I knew that after like few days, I decided to like go on with this journey of GMAT. Like I have to do it next year, the MBA. So I asked one of my fellow ISB student, my senior, and he recommended me with eGMAT. Some of his friends recommended him too. So that's when I just registered into eGMAT and started my course. And the start was, I think, I was in the starting, I did the courses very like on time, but gradually I lost my touch and then came back. I took another renewal of the package, and then I started ahead with it.
Yeah.
So in all, this starting was like when I saw my initial scores, it was like I was not doing well in like every section was like average only, right?
Yeah.
There was not one section that was like out of the world or something like that. So I was like, I have to work on all the sections, that means. So that's how I started. I enrolled into eGMAT. Yeah, and started with the verbal.
Yes. So when you got onto the platform, you took the diagnostic mock, and like you said, right, there was scope for improvement across, and it's completely fine because you were new to this domain, you were just starting off, right? In verbal, when we are talking about improvement, I have the scores here. The 495 actually had a V78, right, which is a 42 percentile, and at this point you have a V83. Right. So when you look at this drastic improvement, what were the key skills that you developed along the way that helped you make, this progress possible?
Yeah, so first of all, I was pretty sure I don't know how to solve those questions. Like the first attempt, even I was giving the first mock, right? It was like I could just mark anything, like because I wasn't sure what the question is saying. So when I went through that master comprehension module, then I understood the words, right? What's assumption, what's strengthener, what's weakener. So going through all this, then you have a deep understanding of what the question is saying. Initially, when you see a question, all options tend to be similar only. You don't know what the storyline has to be. Like, what's the answer to this question, or what's the answer to this argument? And in fact, you couldn't even understand what is the argument in so many questions. So working on those parts was very essential. Like to understand the meaning of all the words is very important. And it was not vocabulary based for sure. It was just understanding based. So obviously, when I started giving those practice quizzes and when I was seeing the solutions for it, each question followed the same pattern, which was the pre-thinking pattern, right? Like you understand what the question is saying, and then you see like what will make the argument wrong, and then find the strengthener or the weakener. So that is how, like at that time, it was seeming to be very complicated. It's not like in the first time I got it. Like it was very complicated initially, but then obviously I worked through it. And gradually, when I came back to verbal after completing my DI, after completing my quant and DI, when I came back to it, then actually I applied those concepts in my cementing quizzes. One thing which I did wrong was I did not do the cementing quizzes right after my course. So I did it like post completing all my quant and DI. Then I came back to it. So there is the gap. Then there was a gap that I created for myself. So when I was going through that gap, then I like saw more videos, like what are the solutions. It was like honestly practice. Then when I kept on going to the solutions, then I got to know like what is the click to the question, right? Then I also attended some of the seminars or the workshops on Saturdays and Sundays, right? So there's a better understanding, like because they are doing it together, and everyone, like the 30 to 40 people who have joined the seminar, doing it together, and you understand कि हाँ 98% लोग मेरे वाला कर रहे हैं. So that question, like that thing comes together. So in that sessions, 2 or 3 I attended for like RC and critical thinking. So that is where it helped me.
And
like
these sessions that you're talking about are the webinars, the GMAT Club webinars that we host on the GC?
Yeah. No. So the weekly seminars that you have, right, on Saturdays and Sundays at 11.
Understood. Yes,
Yeah.
Understood. Yes.
Yeah. So I attended those on Saturdays and Sundays, the 2 to 3 hour long sessions.
Yes. That the subject matter experts or Rajat and Payal take.
Yeah. So Rajat sir was taking, and some then Quant and all Payal ma'am was taking. So all these I went through, like I took few of them. I won't say I took a lot of them, but I only took it because when I was seeing that I wasn't able to score that thing, like I have done the course and still I'm not able to, because I was not picking up the clarity of that pre-thinking thing. And gradually it happened, but it did not happen for each and every question. So when I started with my cementing quizzes, everything was going okay, and I felt like I'm getting a decent score, and I honestly had it in back of my mind that I will score better in quant and DI. I just need to score good enough in verbal. That was my main objective.
Yeah.
And so that, as you can see, the lowest score is for verbal only, but thankfully that's.
But it's still a V83.
It's just 84 percentile. Yes. That's also good enough for me. So then I started with sectional mocks, and then in the sectional mocks, I used to do all like the full RC wrong, like 3 to 4 questions all wrong. And for some RCs they were correct, but they were like out of 3, probably 2 RCs, I'm getting none of the question right. And that was honestly because of the not paying attention to each and every line and not going through it quickly. So timing was a factor there. Timing had to be managed. So gradually with all the condensed mocks, first we have, in those mocks, I was able to do it better because of the like more time with each question. But then when I used to give the normal mock, then it used to be like
a struggle.
Yeah, because I had it in my mind that I don't want to miss any question. So just following through the passage, not reading each and every line properly, it messed up the question and the whole then it stuck with me that once I'm not reading the RC, I'm spoiling 3 to 4 questions. So I started focusing on my RC reading part a bit more. I went through the critical reasoning questions quickly and gave more time to RC questions, like starting with a 6-minute read to a 3-minute read. I did that somehow. And initially I thought this can't happen in 3 minutes or 4 minutes. But then gradually, like giving more and more sectional mocks, cementing quizzes, and like creating my own quizzes, I was able to do it in a 3 to 4 minute time. And that's how I got the questions correct.
Yeah, here you say a very interesting part, because in RC, a lot of people struggle with timing, right? And you clearly mentioned that, you had timing issues in the beginning, but gradually you were able to cut it down, right? So what were those minute changes that you were doing? Because reading speed and everything, I understand, right? But was there something that you were doing differently now? Because 6 to 3 is like 50% of the timing gone.
Yeah, so because initially, when we read too much into the lines, you kind of like, it gets kind of complicated in your own mind. You actually need to understand what is the gist of the passage and not go into the very detail of it.
The main idea.
Main idea. Initially, what I used to do was I used to go through each and every word, because it kind of gets confusing, right? So there are some easy passages, some difficult passages. In the easy passages, you obviously go through easily, but in the difficult ones, you have a problem. Like, you won't even get what the previous line is saying. So in that cases, what I understood was just understand the words and make a story if you're not getting the whole thing. And then I went ahead and not stopped there, because if you stop there to understand the previous thing again and again, you mess up your timing. And that is somewhere I corrected myself. I was like, if I don't get the passage, that's okay. I focus on the next passages, and automatically the storyline connects itself, right? Like when we're coming on to the last passage, like what's the conclusion or what is the author trying to say?
Yes.
And that, otherwise, I'm a very slow reader. I am not a fast reader, but then pause points, obviously, right? Like just to give a 2 second pause to understand ki this has happened. Okay, now we're on to next step. Okay, this has happened. Now we're on to next step. So gradually it is a lot of practice. It's not a one day thing. It is a lot of practice. And sometimes even you're doing it and you think that nothing is improving, but obviously on the final day, you know how it came. Like it is just the practice of questions. A lot of questions. I think I just crossed the mark of completing all the questions in all the sections. I was like, I need to do all the questions possible, all the question types. Then obviously the question types keep on repeating and you know how to crack that question.
Yeah, right. You get a familiarity with the patterns as well, right? So in verbal, CR and RC, you were able to do it, sectional test done, right? And like you said, the sequence that you followed for your learning path was verbal, quants, Diya, right? In the quants as well, you have taken the approach of stage 1 and stage 2. But since we know that our quants has the pace feature, which is slightly different than, it's not there in the verbal. So starting from, because you started with a slightly modest score, right? Q77. But I know that inherently you had the confidence that quant is something that maybe in the first mock it did not go as well. But you knew that at the back of the mind, the concepts are there. Your background said that, you could do well, right? So how did the pace feature help you in, bridging those gaps in quants?
I think in quant, I was skipping most of the sections because of the pace only. Like basics and all, the first module, I didn't even pay, I think, more than half an hour in it, because I knew all the basics, like the real numbers, whole numbers, and this whole story I know from because of my earlier education, right? Then coming on to the number properties, algebra, and all these were few things where I need to get it again, right? In me, I don't remember all that 11th and 12th study. So getting back to that algebra and the arithmetic part, it was quite difficult to like get back it on your tips, right? Like how to do it, because in me, I would imagine like, I can see a question and algebra and I can solve it very quickly. But while actually solving in the practice quizzes, it wasn't as easy. Then there were quick tips in your structure, right? In your modules also, which I actually paid attention to improve my efficiency. Because if I would do it in a normal way, it would take time. Like if I just do it in a basic CBSE manner way, then it would obviously take time. Then I saw these solutions to queue up the questions you are given, right? And you get those hints written there, like how to solve it. And for example, in the inequality part or in the wavy line method, right? These all things are new concepts. So these help me to solve it in a much better way. Otherwise, if I do it without knowing those tricks, it would take a lot of time. So those methods helped me a lot. So but honestly, quant, I just went through it very fastly. Like each module, I did not pay the exact amount of time, because I knew that when I will be practicing the questions in real time later on, that's when I will like put in more effort to understand what question, how it needs to be done. That's when I actually did it also. When I came back to quant questions afterwards, that's when I saw all the solutions. I understood the question types, and that's when I actually improved. I wasn't doing great in quant as well, but at the end, I knew that I'm improving with each question.
Yeah. So what were the common errors that you were doing, Diya, or what were the common pitfalls that, you were falling in quants?
Silly mistakes only. I mean, a lot of silly mistakes, because sometimes you see the question and you don't see that A is a positive integer sometimes, or it's a non-negative integer. So you miss such minute details in the question. And that's again, the reading thing is much important. The pause points are important. To note down what the question is already mentioned is important. And because when you're finding the solution, you need to go back to the constraints, right? That okay, this is all honestly there. So I need to see the answers, that this should not be the case here. I don't mark the wrong answer. So that jump, it requires some time, because you can be careless initially, right? That you're not reading the question and you're focusing on solving only the question part, and you miss the statement part. So gradually it improves with practice. I think it requires both the things. See, initially you need to understand how to solve the question also. So it's okay if you do those mistakes initially, but then when you know that you know the concept, then I focused on the statement and reading part and constraint parts afterwards, and then obviously collectively I could score better.
Yeah. Right. And I think that's a very important tip here, because, like you said, bifurcate the issue. The issue can be either conceptual, that you have the problem, you don't know the concepts and the process, and you learn them. right? And otherwise, it could be behavioral actions, like you said,
Yeah.
misreading or rushing through, or like you said, simple mistakes such as, A is equals to something and you wrote something and you just solved that entire question, right? You took a couple of sectional tests moving from one section to other, right? So do you think these sectional tests help you prepare much more better for the mocks and the actual test?
I think they are the only true answer to it because nothing else helps. Like the other things are your concept only. GMAT is only about how you solve the questions and how you do it in a pressure environment. Like I will agree to this that GMAT is the best test, right? Because it actually addresses each question. It can point out if you have been like wrong in a question, and then if you mess it up in your brain, you will not do good in the paper. So in that case, going through practice quizzes and everything, you have much time, then it's fine. Like you go through it easily. But the sectional, you need to focus very nicely. If you're like going wrong in some question, you need to understand that it's fine. You need to go to the next question. And honestly, once I'll share my experience of the final GMAT paper also, how I cracked it. It is only because of going to the next question, like and leaving the old question behind, the one you're not getting. It's fine to leave it behind and go ahead and come back later. So, and that will only happen if you are managing your time. If you keep, like initially, I used to take 3 to 4 minutes on each question, and that is something very bad. And then what I did it to 2 minutes, but then again, 3 or 4 questions were like 5 minutes. So again, it was like, I wasn't keeping up with the timing. Last 3 2 questions were always like, I was missing it while in sectional mocks. So like, then I realized that I'll come back to these questions later on, like do each question in 2 minutes. And when you can see like you have 6 minutes left, and then you can go to those 3 questions. You have already read the question previously, so you can go with a better mindset to solve those questions.
Yeah, and that's a very crucial test taking skill that I also, as a mentor, tell my students that, sometimes you need to take a back seat. It's okay to take a back seat because you need to finish the test as well. Otherwise, that can lead to a higher penalty, right? Now, talking about errors, because we're talking about, you could find out the issues that you're facing in verbal, now the errors in quants, but how did you literally identify these errors? Like,
yeah, so I am not the person who did the error log thing, but I did it probably in my mind, not in written, but in my mind, because it's very, like, I did all this thing in last 1 month, to be very honest, because I didn't have time to study previously with my work. So I just took that one last work from home month where I actually focused on the study along with the office stuff. But to understand each question and where you're going wrong, you actually, when you see the solution, you actually just tell yourself, oh my God, how couldn't I get it? It's so easy. Like, that is when I trained myself. Like, you know all the questions, Diya. You just know it. You are like in the question, you just are applying the correct point, right? Like, for example, in questions of permutation and combinations, like that is the most complicated part, I would say. Like those word problems, and in which you have permutation, combination, work problems, ratio problems, mixture problems, those questions, they're not too difficult, but it is only dependent on how you actually write the first thing, like the actual
translating
statement,
into
the translating,
yes.
and then the answer is so easy, But just doing that, we get confused, and then obviously don't get to the answer. And I struggled in that part a lot. So finally, I understood through these solutions, like the solutions were my teaching part only. Like going through each solution, I understood then how to begin with the question first. If I begin it wrong, then I can't solve it. Like then even if I take 3 to 4 minutes, it can't happen. If I begin it correctly, 1.5 minutes and I'm done with it. So that is the thing when like I understood how to start the question. So for me, in quant and DI questions, my error log thing was that I understood how to start the question well, and then come at the solution. Because wherever I was going wrong, the only issue I was facing, I was not starting the question correct, or I wasn't getting the concept right. So
the first step itself, right?
Yeah, and if you have the first step correct, 100% the question will be correct, because GMAT is not that paper where you will get some very difficult questions or very difficult equations. It is only about the solving and understanding the complicated situations, and then you obviously get it.
Right. Couldn't have agreed more with you on this. Now, talking about the last section, here I wanted to get your perspective, because DI, we all believe that to succeed in DI, you need certain kind of ability in quants and verbal, right? It's a blend of that. So why don't you highlight on that? Because I know DI is something that you also took in the end. So by the time you had the knowledge for verbal, you had the knowledge for quants, right? So did it give you an initial boost up in your DI?
Yeah, so with DI, I was like, I can do it very nicely because I'm done with my verbal, I'm done with my quant, and like then looking at data sufficiency questions or multi-source reasoning questions, everything seems to be easy. But
Mm-hmm.
I would say that DI is the most difficult section out of all the three sections because it requires both the skills at the same time. You
Yep.
need to apply both the skills at the same time. And while going through the course, I found it very easy. I found because obviously when you're going through a course, you are in one mindset only, right? That I need to solve this question, and you're just doing DI only, or you're just doing sufficiency questions only, or two-part analysis questions only. So in that case, your mindset is only at one question. So that
Mm-hmm.
seems easy, no doubt. That is easy to crack. But when you're doing it together, like all questions coming up in a mixture, that's when you need the actual trick, how to solve it. Because otherwise, your mind space can't get evolved with each question. It is a training you need to give because when I started with DI, it seemed very easy. And when I did the sectional mocks, I was scoring so bad. I was like, how is this possible? I know the questions. And when I saw the solution, I was like, yeah, it's so easy. How can't I do it? So that's when I actually applying whatever we applied in quant and whatever we applied in verbal together, right?
Yeah.
Reading the question. And when you know what is the question is, applying the quant skills, right? How to solve it. And that's how you get it. But honestly, DI is tricky. My DI in final GMAT also was too tricky. Like I wasn't able to do it. I got like 7 questions wrong. Imagine I got 7 questions wrong in DI, and my DI score is 83, and that is 96th
96
percentile.
percentile. Exactly. So we can just estimate the kind of hard questions they must be, right? Now, since you've called DI tricky, Diya, like what were, the challenges that you faced in DI? And how did you
Yeah,
go about overcoming them?
yeah. So DI, I found each section to be tricky. Like data sufficiency in the end when I was giving a lot of mocks, my data sufficiency questions were going wrong, terribly going wrong, and I didn't understand how is that possible.
Mm-hmm.
So it was getting challenging because I was like, these are the easy questions, data sufficiency. How am I getting wrong in that? So I just took a step back. I went through my eGMAT portal. I understood. I just saw 2 to 3 videos again, just for like getting into the mind space of solving those questions again. And then when I get back to the data sufficiency question, I was able to crack it because following that order for each question is different, right? For data sufficiency, the order is different. Like you eliminate the options and then you work on something. So that is something I was missing initially. And then when I actually got back into how exactly to solve those type of questions, I was able to do it very nicely. And hence I have the score, right?
Yes.
So yeah. So data sufficiency was this. Then graphical interpretation and table analysis. Somehow I found that the easy part because I have everything in front of me and I just need to find the answer. So the only mistakes there were the like not paying attention part only, like not reading properly or not counting the dots properly to find the probability, right? Like those questions, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
So yeah, those questions, like that was only the silly mistake. So that the important trick there is to pay attention very carefully because these are the easy questions you can crack because you have the information in front of you. So if you pay the attention, you know the answer.
Yeah, you could infer much more better than the DS. Okay. And when you were wrapping up with your DI, because a lot of people, like you also said, time management is a problem in DI, right? Because every question type requires different kind of time bandwidth. And that is the nature of how the DI questions work, right? So what was your timing strategy in DI?
So, the timing strategy, I think it all depends upon the mindset again. So, initially, when I used to do the mocks, my pattern was verbal, quant, and DI. And I thought I'll take a break before DI to get into that mindset of giving the answers correctly. But that wasn't happening for me. So, I did the DI part first only because I wanted to do it with a fresh mind. So, when I started with that, it is like it for me, it was beneficial, probably for not for everyone, right? But for me, it was beneficial because I knew that in this particular section, I will apply all my skills together. And then I am warmed up for the coming questions as well, like for the content verbal, right? So going through the questions and the time management thing that you're mentioning here.
Yeah.
DI, there are 20 questions, but still I was messing it up. I was getting around only 16 within the time limit. And last 3 to 4 questions, I was always missing. So it was a kind of like I needed to do a check for each question. Like only in DI I did that, not for the other sections. In DI, I truly focused on how much time I'm giving to a particular question. And if that is not happening, I move on to the other question. And let me just share the experience of the DI actual GMAT paper.
Yeah.
I started with my paper. The first question was terrible. I couldn't understand a word they were saying. And I was like, this is the first question of the first section I'm taking, and I'm not getting it.
Mm.
I obviously got panicked, right? I moved on to the next question. I bookmarked the question. I moved on to the next question. Again, the same thing happened.
Mm.
I moved on to the next question. Again, the same thing happened. And honestly, I panicked like anything. But then I just took a like 3 to 4 second break, and I was
Good.
like, it's fine. Three
Yeah.
questions are gone. First 3 questions are gone somehow. Let's see what we can do ahead, right? Because what you do in the paper actually matters. Not like that time you need to just have a control on yourself. And starting from the next question, I could get everything correct. And you won't imagine, I had 7 minutes left at the end, 7 minutes to get back to the first 3 questions, which I didn't do initially. And that's how I could complete my DI section. And when I saw my score report, the first 2 out of the 3, I did it correctly.
Yeah.
So that's something when I thought I couldn't do it, but honestly, I came back and did it. So the time management part, the multi-source reasoning, it takes up a lot of time because there's like sometimes 2 tabs, sometimes 3 tabs, and then I think mine was like very lengthy multi-source reasoning. It was like 2 lengthy questions, and for some of the questions, I haven't even seen those type of questions previously.
Mm.
So in those questions, I had to pay extra attention. I had to give a bit more time, and then the next graphical interpretation questions, I just did it like 40 seconds, 30 seconds. Some questions you need to skip that way. Data sufficiency questions, 30, 40 seconds, you can crack it if the question is easy. So that's how I actually moved on and came back to the initial 3 questions. I think that's what helped me, because if I would have gone wrong there, then my score would have dropped.
Yep. Now, since we have already started talking about your GMAT attempt, right? We'll just take one step back to the mocks, okay? Because
Okay. Yeah.
as a student, I'm sure you have gone through the mocks. You understand how important role they play when you get, you're nearing your test date, right? So why don't you walk us through your mock phase? How many mocks you took, and what were the small, nuances that you could identify in the mocks that made a difference?
Yeah. So when I was working on the eGMAT platform and those 5 mocks, I was still not having the correct mindset. I was still going through the questions not carefully. I was missing that touch, right? That to solve the question correctly. Because probably I was still careless and still like not into the zone of like cracking the exam. I was not expecting much from myself, if you can say that, because you could see like my scores were not up to the mark on the portal. Then in between, before the fourth and the fifth mock of eGMAT, I gave the first practice test of the official
Official
GMAT.
one, yeah.
Yeah, and then I scored 485. Imagine, like I started with a 495, and then I'm seeing a 485, and that was a click. Like I had to crack it. I was like, there are 13 days left for the exam. You can't mess it up now. You know it all. How like I was like, what to study? Like there was nothing else to study. That means I know everything, right? It's just the practice that will make me better and how to solve the exam. So even just with the first attempt, I actually bought the all the mocks the GMAT official has, right? I bought all. I was like, I'll give all the mocks and I will see all the type of questions and I'll solve every question to actually give my exam. So that's the investment I did there, time investment and the money investment, but just to crack it at the end of the day. So then I started with my mocks. Each day I used to give 2 mocks only, and after those mocks, I used to go through because there's no actual solutions, right, to those questions.
Yeah.
So I used to refer back to my eGMAT questions and the solutions, or sometimes I would go back to the concepts and understand what concepts needs to be applied to these questions. And when I did this cycle, gradually my score kept on increasing.
Yeah.
Starting from 485 in my first official, and I gave 14 mocks in total. Like it was crazy, like day and night I did it. And that's when on the last day I had my exam on 25th of October, and 24th of October evening, the second mock I gave, I scored a 695, and on the actual day also I got 695. So from 485 to 695 in 13 days, it was nothing, and just practice and practice, and getting to the solution of the question. As I mentioned, how to start the question was a trick for me. If I start it wrong, then I will mess it up, and if I know how to start it, I will do it correctly. So that's how, like, in that I was scoring. For the quant, it was going the same, only 1 or 2 questions was getting wrong, but Diya and verbal was quite difficult to crack, and it was the same case in the actual exam also.
Yeah, right. But it all turned out well. If we talk about the test, right, you were able to achieve good score and a good balanced score. Like it's not that one section is really high, like a Q88, a V83, D83. Overall, it's a very balanced score that you were able to achieve there, right? They are talking about your GMAT attempt. right? Now the actual test comes into place. So you mentioned about the sequence. You said that you started with DI, then you moved forward, right? Quant
Yeah,
and
then
verbal,
quant
right?
and verbal.
Yes. So why don't you walk us through your test day experience? While giving the test, did you get a hint that things are really working? I know you gave us a small glimpse of your DI, how the DI
Yeah.
was a bit of a tremble in the beginning. What about, quants and verbal?
So quant was like just going through each question very quickly because quant I was able to do it, and there was just one question where I was getting it like I was getting confused. So again, I did the same trick I did in DI. I just took a break. I went ahead, came back to that question, and quant I actually finished the section leaving 3 minutes. Like
Mm-hmm.
I did not use 3 minutes, and I completed it in 42 minutes only, which was achievement. At like in that moment, I was feeling like, oh my god, how can I do this? Because in the previous sectional mocks or even mocks, it was so difficult to crack all the questions like within the 2 minute range, right? But on the actual day and even in the previous mocks, I was actually getting to that mock, like
Yeah.
to that mark, right?
You slowly
So
develop that. You slowly,
yeah,
yes.
that is a learning curve you need to take. Like
Mm.
for everyone, it might be different. Like for someone, they're starting with the 630 only and they're getting up to a 685, right? So for people, it might be the case because probably they're just lacking the like the concept somewhere and they know how to solve the paper. For me, it was I knew the concepts. I knew the paper is not difficult. I was like, this paper is not difficult. This is something I can crack. It is how to solve it I need to crack.
Mm.
And that I did in last 10 to 15 days, giving mocks rapidly, and it turned out for the best for me. Otherwise, if I wouldn't have done it, I don't know, like at the end I was like, I'm obviously giving a second attempt. I can't
Yeah.
do it in a first attempt. But like last 3 to 4 days, I knew I am able to do it. Because as I said previously, when I used to see a question, I was like, this is so easy, how can't I do it? Where am I going wrong? So at the end, all the dots connected and I was
Yeah.
able to do it.
Good.
Yes. So time management in quant, like in DI, go through the easy questions. Don't waste time on the easy questions. If you feel like this is a very easy question, accept it. It's easy. Like, don't put in more effort to understand how it is so easy. Like, many of my peers are also doing the same thing. Like, how this question is so easy. Why
Over analyzing, thinking that,
yeah.
there must be something that you're missing.
And then
Yes.
putting in the 1 minute 30 seconds into a very easy question when it can be solved in like 40 to 50 seconds. So that is something you need to manage because there will be difficult questions coming ahead. And then when the difficult question comes ahead, you need to take out time for it. You need
Yeah.
to find the correct answer. You need to put in that extra time. So that's where you give 2.5 minutes or 3 minutes of time to that question. And then it's a balance, right? It's
Yes.
just a balance of time for each question. It works out differently. And if we have done it correctly for each question, you will have time, extra time. I never thought that would be the case. I always thought that time will be less only. But if you know that balance of timing with each question, you will have extra time left. And touchwood, I had extra time in all the three sections. Even in verbal, I was left with 3 to 4 minutes. Like last question, I was like having 3 to 4 minutes to solve. So I mean, just a balance and just a trick of like understanding how to solve each question, and you will have time to get the questions correct. Go back to the questions you have bookmarked. Initially, I was not even bookmarking the questions. I was like, because I'm not even able to complete the section, there's no use of bookmarking the question. I will not even get back to it. But then it all actually came along with the practice, and I was able to go back to my bookmark question, solve it correctly. In each, I just saw my score report also. I was like, yeah, I solved that question correct when I came back to it because I had the time. So that means I have the confidence that, okay, I have time now. I can see it with a clear mindset. I don't have anything lingering on. Yeah.
Yeah.
It worked.
Yes. Another thing that I wanted to ask is sequencing plays a very crucial role, right? A lot of students have this question, what is the right sequence? It is slightly subjective from person to person as well, right? So why did you choose the sequence that you did?
So initially, I was working with verbal quant DI. Like for many mocks, I did the same pattern again and again. And I thought that was correct. I initially thought because verbal is also weak, DI is also weak. So before verbal, I'll have a clear mind space. Quant, I can do it without the break also. And then DI, again, I have the time of 10 minutes where I am able to do it with a clear mindset, right? But that was again not, I was pretty sure quant is in middle only without any break because I know where I have my strength and I can use it there only, right? So then I changed because in DI I was scoring very bad, like very bad. As I was telling, it was getting very difficult for me because again, while giving the mocks, I was already exhausted, like totally exhausted till the DI because when you're done with the verbal, so much reading, then so much solving in quant, I couldn't understand those questions. So then I just changed the pattern in the last 6 to 7 mocks. and then it turned out good for me. So then what happened was, I knew verbal is a section where I am weak. So it's okay if I don't have a clear mindset. Let me just focus on the good scoring part. So DI, then if I'm done with the first section DI, I don't need to put in a lot of effort anymore. Then quanti is easy. And verbal, I think for me, it was just luck that, okay, if I can get the question, I can understand the question, then I will mark the correct answer. And some questions I wasn't able to understand. And if you're not able to understand the argument and what the author is saying, you're not able to crack the answer. That's the truth, right? Like, I guess like 80% of the questions I can understand, but like there was some questions that even after so much practice, I wasn't able to get it. So I knew that verbal, I am not able to improve that mark. So it's fine to leave it at the end. And honestly, I will have a 10-minute break. So I can get back to it. I will read the questions more carefully. I don't have the stress lingering on, like I need to work on the DI or quant part later. So that worked out for the best for me. That is crucial. The pattern, the sequence is crucial. Honestly, you need to figure it out yourself only. No one else's works for you, because someone might be good in verbal and not good in quant. So they need another pattern. That's fine.
Yeah, I think the sequence suited you best. And also, since you had done a lot of hit and trial method, right? You had done your own experiments on a couple of mocks, and for at least, like you mentioned, 5-6 mocks consecutively, you were going with the sequence. So I'm sure that when you went on the test also, there was a lot of confidence that, I've done this before. This is not something new. I should be able to replicate.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Now, when we look at this journey, Diya, because you mentioned that, you started off in the starting of the 2024, almost in February, March. And at this point, we are in November, right? So when you look at this journey, it's been a long journey, right? But definitely it's been a wholesome journey because the end has been beautiful, right? So when you look back at your journey, what would be the key takeaways that you would like to share with the other GMAT aspirants?
I would just suggest that if you're like starting with the GMAT course anywhere, right? Just then go through it properly. What I did was in February, I was in bed rest due to a fracture. That is why I started the GMAT randomly. But when I got recovered and then when I was working, I wasn't able to manage my studies and I was not in the mind space again. Initially, I was. That is why I signed up for the course. But then I lost the touch, right? So that is where the problem started, because the verbal I had done like so many months back. Then I had to renew my course, and like it became a very long journey, which it shouldn't be. It can be a 3 to 4 month journey also. Like you can crack it in 3 to 4 months. And if I would have done that, I would have done in a better way also. But I wasn't in that mind space. Up till August, it was August that I realized that I need to crack it. Like until then, I was like very careless about the idea of MBA or GMAT because I was focusing on something else in my life. So first takeaway would be, if you are actually confident about taking a GMAT and getting into MBA or whatever, so start when you are ready. Like don't waste your time, don't waste your money also. Start when you're ready, and once you're ready mentally, you will do it in 3 to 4 months of time. So that's the first key takeaway that I didn't follow. I should have done that. Secondly, just understanding that what concepts are important, right? Where you're lacking. It matters a lot. For example, if I would have worked on verbal a bit more, a 695 was a good score, but I know like I could have got to 725 also if I would have worked on the verbal part a bit more, because verbal I was lacking. I couldn't develop the skill because I didn't have time. I was like, I need to apply to my colleges. Round 2, round 3 is coming. I need to apply. So I'm giving the GMAT right now only. If I would have time, I would have taken another month or so and get into the verbal part also to get a better score. Thankfully, things worked out and I got a decent score, but I was lacking in that one section. So, which shouldn't be the case. You should be confident in all the 3 sections. It's not possible, but you should be, like, because getting all the 3 sections with clarity is very important. In case you don't have in one, you'll always be underconfident. Like, even when I was giving the paper, I was underconfident about the verbal section. I had it in the back of my mind that I can't do it well. So that shouldn't be the case ideally, right? It should be like, yeah, you can do it. So that's the other key takeaway, that you should focus on all the 3 sections equally. Even if you're good in one section exceptionally, that's good for you, but work on the other sections as well.
True. Yeah.
I think then time management is the key. Like initially, if I knew how to manage the time, then like there are many things you can go through, right? But anyhow, everyone's journey is different. How someone would understand a concept in the starting, someone would understand the concept at the end. It should just work out for them, right? So everyone has their own journey. The only thing is focus. Like if you are focusing throughout your preparation, it's very easy to crack. And if you don't have that focus bit, right, if you're just letting it be and not like understanding the actual concept, then you might get distracted and you can't get the score then.
Yeah. Right. I think you summarized it really well, Diya, right? Because you covered everything that, focus, right? When you're sitting for GMAT prep, make sure the allocated time is there, right? Secondly, yes, the concepts, the focus practice is something that has to come into place, right? Even the discussion that, we took part for the sequencing, I think the way that you put forward would give a lot of clarity to a lot of GMAT aspirants out there who are still figuring it out, right?
Correct.
And for someone who has actually tried a sequence and it has worked out for them, I think it brings a lot more room for other people also to give it a shot. Right. So on that note, yeah, I think I'll take this opportunity to wish you all the best from the
Thank you so
entire
much.
eGMAT team. And thank you for doing this. And
Thank you.
yeah, I'm sure it'll, do a lot of changes to a lot of people's strategies on how they're taking things forward. So thanks again and all the best.
Thanks to you and the eGMAT faculty, honestly. I mean, each one of the person who is giving those video lectures, everyone is putting in their 100% to make the students understand the concept. And everything matters at the end of the day. So each effort counts. So for me, even everything counts. The online lectures, the recorded ones, everything mattered at the end of the day. The inputs from everywhere, it actually brought success for me.
Yeah, and we are glad that we could
Yeah.
be a part of your journey because that's the whole motive, right? Try to help people achieve their target scores in the most optimal way possible. And we are glad that we could be a part of your journey too. Thanks,
Thank you so
Dia.
much, Abha.